host, Sabrina Salvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. All right. Welcome everyone for a special Sunday live stream. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Roundtable and Friday for the Sabby Show. And you can catch me here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. I want to go ahead and let everyone introduce themselves on the panel. We'll go ahead and get started with Josana.
Hi, everyone. Hi, ladies. Hi, everybody in the comments. I'm Josana. I organize with all of you here. We are all together in this. This is just so beautiful to see. A bunch of women doing a bunch of stuff together. Yes, here to have this conversation with y'all. Happy.
Awesome. Kim?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Sunday. I am Kim Brown. I am the host of the YouTube show Burn It Down with Kim Brown, a safe space where we set oppression ablaze. We talk about workers' issues. We always center marginalized voices, particularly that of Black women. It is a Black women first channel. And I'm very excited to be joined again with all my lady comrades once again here with Sabby. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Keisha and Courtney.
Hey, Sabby. Hey, everyone. Thanks for having us. We're at a family reunion or something. Yeah, we've been working with all of y'all so much. Lovely to see your faces. We're the Bank Sisters. I'm Courtney. I'm Keisha. We have a YouTube channel where we talk about politics and other things. And also we're organizing Camp Dada with a lot of the lovely ladies here. And yeah, we're excited to be a part of the panel. Thanks for having us, Sab.
Cool. Zeneb?
Hey guys, it's good to be back on and to see you guys in like kind of in person today. I have been an organizer for many years, just excited to move on to the next chapter. I don't know, get into some trouble and shake stuff up and have this conversation tonight.
Awesome. All right. So tonight we're going to talk about Roe v. Wade. As many of you know, there was that leak from the Supreme Court that Roe v. Wade would be overturned. Tonight, I want to talk about who do we feel is at fault here. So if you didn't have a chance to do so, please respond to that poll that's pinned to the live chat, whether you think it's the Republicans, the Democrats, or both. And I have a couple of things that I want to show as well in reference to this. But the first question I want to open up to the panel: who do you think is to blame for the fact that we are in this situation right now where the Supreme Court is going to most likely overturn Roe v. Wade? And I'll just go around randomly on the panel. I'll go ahead and start with Zeneb.
I think it is both Republicans and Democrats. I mean, there's a long history, so it kind of starts back post segregationist era, Jim Crow coming out of that. We saw a shift from the desegregation in schools rhetoric that was trying to stop that to shifting toward abortion. And it was initially a conservative movement. And it was political. It was a way to take something that is a wedge issue and politicize it. And we see them doing that over and over and over again. But fast forward, and we have seen the Democrats not do enough to stop it, not really stand in the way, not pass any legislation, allow our rights to be chipped away, not run seats in rural areas where we see it being chipped away in states like Texas, Georgia, elsewhere, and allowing hundreds of judges to pass by in every single presidency that we have had that have allowed these types of cases that have been brought forth, such as in Utah, Wisconsin, other states, that have now pushed the boundaries in the Supreme Court to where Roe versus Wade is challenged. If we hadn't had those judges, if they hadn't been so singly focused, and the conservative right is so much better at organizing than, unfortunately, the left, and definitely than the Democrats, because they distract us on the left. They distract us on the left with their empty promises, their BS, allowing these judges to go forth, allowing this wedge issue to get them reelected and then not do anything about it.
Well said, Zeneb. I want to add something, or add on to something that Zeneb said. I don't know if everyone's aware of this. I think I may have said this on the show before, but abortion was a political issue. Like Zeneb was just saying, that's what it was brought about. I don't know if everyone is aware, but a long time ago, it used to be that Catholic priests actually used to do abortions. And then the Republican Party saw, hey, this is an issue where we can probably bond with the evangelical crowd to get them onto the Republican side. And that's how abortion became a political issue. But originally, if you go all the way back, Catholic priests actually used to perform abortions. So I want to go ahead and go to Kim.
I am going to absolutely blame this on the Democrats for the simple fact that the Republicans have been telling us for many decades now that this was their intention all along. This was the long goal. And Zainab is right that the right is far more organized than we are, but you know, they've been in white supremacy congregation and remaining in power together for a lot longer than we have. So I understand why they are further along the line, especially specifically as it relates to this issue. But even in the, let's just say the post-Roe modern era, we had two Democratic presidents who served 2 terms each. At points in time during their presidency, each enjoyed a Democratic majority in Congress as well. And because they just were so seemingly feckless and short-sighted, and maybe even underestimating the Republicans. And the reason, again, there's many reasons to blame Democrats here, but when you have the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and even Chuck Schumer in the Senate pine for a Republican Party that they could recognize, that a Republican Party that they could have bipartisan agreement with. This was always that same Republican Party. Either the Republican Party of yore was still advocating for the eventual overturn of Roe v. Wade and stripping back women's reproductive rights, and even further than that, our contraceptive rights as it stands right now. Everything is on the table, unfortunately, and the Democrats did this. They did this. Obama had the opportunity to really put the press on Ruth Bader Ginsburg to get her to step down while he was still in office, so he could potentially have appointed her successor, and the balance of the court would not be quite as lopsided as it is right now. And a lot of Democrats voted for these same justices that have let their positions be known even before they were up for confirmation. So I know it's easy to say both parties, and to some extent that is not wrong. But at the same time, when the shark tells you it's going to bite you, I mean, just believe the shark when it gives you that warning, that heads up. So Democrats should have foreseen this, should have had the opportunities to present legislation in Congress that would have made access to abortion a federal right, so we wouldn't even be doing this stupid state-by-state piecemeal sort of bullshit that has now put women in such peril who live in red states and who are finding access to legal abortions to be something that is now cost prohibitive, time prohibitive, and could eventually be very detrimental to women's lives and to the lives of their families. So Democrats is my short answer there, Sabby.
Well said, Kim. I see Delilah just joined. Delilah, will you go ahead and introduce yourself? And the question is, who do you feel is at fault for the reason why the Supreme Court looks as though they are about to overturn Roe v. Wade?
Gotta just start off strong, huh, Sabby? Okay. Sorry I was late, by the way. It's kind of embarrassing to be late in your own house, so sorry. Yeah, my name is Delilah Barrios. I am the Green Party gubernatorial candidate for governor in Texas. And I have a lot of opinions about, the fault is the policymakers, whoever elects them, it doesn't matter. They still are not beholden to the public and what they want and what, our rights are. They don't really even care about our rights. So I blame them every day because they're the ones putting, like healthcare workers like myself or other women or people just needing reproductive healthcare at risk, not just for litigation, but for actual bodily harm. And so all day, every day, I'm just mad at the, I am mad at the politicians too. You know what I'm saying? Because they love this moment. They think it's a great time for them to pull people their direction when they don't want to take any of the blame or, for what's been happening that they've helped allow happen. So, they both serve the same interests, and that's not us. So the more people that come to terms with that, the better it's going to be for the rest of us.
Well said, Delilah. Keisha and Courtney.
Yeah. Hey, y'all. I think, like just really piggybacking too off of like what everybody said. I mean, I guess it's like, how can you blame the Republicans when they've made it clear that this is their goal the entire time, and why you wouldn't take a psychopath seriously is beyond me. But I think the thing that really bothers me about the Democrats is that they never pick a side either. Like, why is it that they're allowing and they're backing, anti-choice candidates? Why is it that, why is that even allowed? Why is somebody like Joe Biden, why was he even allowed to run for something like president? He was helping a Republican 2 years ago win a House seat in Michigan. They set no standards for what they expect in this party. And they're like, oh, we're just a big tent, we're letting everybody in. Really, we know it's whoever's backed by the most corporate money. But I think like the fact that Democrats don't actually even pick a side of what they stand for, and they try to stand for everything, that really loses, I think, a lot of people. And then you kind of don't even know who is supposed to fight for you. I mean, now Democrats are backing, in Texas, they're backing somebody who actually is perfectly fine with getting rid of abortion. So the leadership of the party is backing that. And it's like, how can we not kind of put this on them? They're the ones who set the agenda.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going with the Democrats as well. I mean, they have known, you can't look at a party like the Republicans that is this focused. I mean, and what Kim was saying about RBG and all of that, I mean, they've had a plan since jump. And if they didn't think that they were going to execute that plan, Democrats are idiots. So, I mean, really, it's just, and I think the fact that they're not jumping on it more now to do even more now, and say, oh no, we messed up, we should be fixing it, is also very telling.
Because that exactly proves that this to them is completely just for political pawn. It's completely just to dangle something for the midterms, because if they cared about us, they would have fixed this shit before. They would have gotten rid of the filibuster. They could have done something with voting rights. But because they always say, oh, well, if we get rid of that, then what are the Republicans going to do when they get in power? Well, I don't know. Maybe if you guys actually started passing some shit, people would vote for you. And then you wouldn't have to worry about them getting in power. But they never do this. Right. So to me, it's like they're just playing with our lives. And it's like we've got to now figure out, which states are legal and which aren't, and almost like make a community that way. It's I don't see them stepping in to intervene at all.
Oh, sorry. Is that okay? I just don't think Democrats are idiots either. They're just very clearly opportunists. This is an opportunity for them. They love telling about how much money they're pulling in to do absolutely nothing for people who actually need healthcare services. So I just, it's like, to me, it's so clear. I just want people to be like, you know what? That is really suspicious that you haven't had abortion access since October of last year, Texas. And they're barely talking about it, right? Because they wanted to use this moment to pull in all the money that they can to do absolutely nothing. And that's their whole game. And it's sad and it's disgusting. I know conservative people and voters, and I don't have any problem asserting my viewpoints with them because they know, you know what I'm saying? We're different. Like, we have different needs. And Democrats are the ones that are like diehard liberals are the ones that are just like, you can't talk about that right now because that's not their fault. And just like the party of victims, and it's disgusting. you know. So
Josana.
I blame both. I blame both parties. But I think my job in a place like this is to unmask white supremacists' best worker ever, the Democrats. Because they are able to weaponize leftist discourse into blackmailing, pressuring people into voting for them. Obama had supermajority. He could have codified Roe versus Wade. He didn't do it. And it's on purpose. So we will always be in their hands. Oh, if you don't vote for us, then you're not going to be able to get an abortion. And we know who is going to be the worst target. The communities of color, Black women, Indigenous women. Like, so we are like always in the hands of the government with a knife in our necks because we allow the Democrats to do so. So what we need, another villain, is the electoral system in the US. That has to change. We have to push for electoral system reform because it's only by pushing for reform that we're able to break the system and bring on change. If the electoral system, it is the way it is, we're not going to be able to get out of this duopoly that only goes for one agenda. Because the Republicans, they are radical like they are, right? Their public is like admiring the way they come out and say the most racist, misogynistic stuff. They have to do like that, and they are. The Democrats are like, oh, we love women. But if you don't vote for us, that we're saying that we are the good guys, you're not going to get an abortion.
I have something I want to play because everyone has at least mentioned Democrats at least once. And I do want to remind everyone, since Obama's name has been brought up, what Obama said in 2009. Now I'm going to go ahead and share this here. Now, this is coming from David Soretta said, I keep watching this 09 clip because it's so much of what got us to this awful moment. He first disses the pro-choice movement, then beautifully explains why reproductive rights are critical, then says those rights aren't his top priority after previously pledging they would be. Now, I don't agree with David Soretta on most things, to be honest with you, but he's correct here. And I do want to hear, I want you to hear what Obama said. Again, this is 2009.
Those who are pro-choice make a mistake when if they suggest, and I don't want to create straw men here, but I think there's some who suggest that this is simply an issue about women's freedom and that there's no other considerations. I think, look, this is an issue that people have to wrestle with, and families and individual women have to wrestle with. The reason I'm pro-choice is because I don't think women take that position casually. I think that they struggle with these decisions each and every day, and I think they are in a better position to make these decisions ultimately than members of Congress or a president of the United States, in consultation with their families, with their doctors, with their clergy. So that's been my consistent position. The other thing that I said consistently during the campaign is I would like to reduce the number of unwanted pregnancies that result in women feeling compelled to get an abortion, or at least considering getting an abortion, particularly if we can reduce the number of teen pregnancies, which has started to spike up again. And so I've got a task force within the Domestic Policy Council in the West Wing of the White House that is working with groups both in the pro-choice camp and in the pro-life camp to see if we can arrive at some consensus on that. Now, the Freedom of Choice Act is not my highest legislative priority.
What?
So
Literally what?
You have someone like Barack Obama who just delivered a lot of word salad to tell you at the end that abortion rights was not a priority. And Nancy Pelosi said it again in 2017.
But Sabby, there was a task force. I don't know if you heard that. I don't know if you heard that.
Problem solved.
So that meant they were taking it seriously. Holy shit. They just reused all of the same lies. Keisha pointed out, she was like, in the West Wing of the White House.
Like, where else would it be? Like, what is that a specific thing to say? Like,
why? You just say
it's
an extra word.
Of course, it's official. Like, very weird. Just, sorry.
I mean, it was a very sort of naive sort of laying out of the issue. So he did say a couple things that I agreed with when he talked about wanting to reduce the quote unquote number of unwanted pregnancies. Now, where he messed up was, well, I mean, this is over 10 plus years ago. So, I mean, I guess the statistics may have changed since then. But a lot of women who are seeking abortions are not teenagers, right? They are adult women. A lot of them already have children and are trying to make the best decision that they can for their entire family. It's always not just the teenager who is dealing with an unwanted pregnancy. I mean, women and pregnant people from a variety of different circumstances are in search of abortion services. But when he talked about reducing the number of unwanted pregnancies, what was naive to me about that is the way that you reduce unwanted pregnancies is you provide comprehensive sex education to all students, to all children. But we live in a ridiculous Christian evangelical right-wing fascist state that doesn't believe that teenagers are engaged in sex and insists on keeping America's youth extremely ignorant to the ways that their own bodies work and to the ways that babies are actually made. So that was a non-starter really from the jump, because half the country wants kids to do abstinence only. I think abstinence only is still the case in Texas, if I'm not mistaken. So Obama was never serious about this. All this consensus building with pro-life. What is the consensus? What is the consensus? The only consensus I can think of is what Bill Clinton said when he wanted abortion to be safe, legal, and rare. Why does it have to be rare? Why women can encounter all the reasons to want to end a pregnancy, to not want to become a mother, to not want to bring a child into a world. Rare should not be something that we associate with abortion. It should be accessible. But yes, that just spiked my blood pressure there, Sabby.
Yes. Thank you for touching on the education part, because that's what I was thinking immediately. I was like, if you're going to be talking about this, then how come I'm not hearing you say anything about funding the schools more, having some sort of forget a task force, actually having some sort of programs for the kids, having some sort of support for women, birth
give them
control,
something to do after school, so they're not just going out and banging. I mean, give them something else to do.
What about his original promise? What got him elected? What got him elected was universal health care and women's health care, domestic violence, women's health care, reproductive rights. That was all the shit he promised us.
Yes.
Universal health. He didn't even mention universal health care once there. And they were like, give us the majority in the Senate. Democrats were like, give us the majority in the Senate and the House, and we're going to give you health care, universal health care. They had 2 years to do that shit with a super majority. And then he's there waffling, talking about having to work with, conservatives on Why?
Right.
Why? Because it was back then, even more people supported the rights to an abortion. It was something like 76% because the propaganda wasn't as saturated as it is now. And so he's talking about compromising with a minority when they have the majority at the House, the Senate, and they promised us universal health care. That's why that's why he was elected in the first place. It never happened. And abortion is health care.
Yeah, I want to add. I'll come back to you, Josana. I want to show everyone this as well, because here you had Nancy Pelosi. Again, this was 2017. Nancy Pelosi said, don't kick anti-abortion Dems from the party. And I'm not going to read this entire thing, but this portion here, she says, this is the Democratic Party. This is not a rubber stamp party. Now, she said that in an interview with the Washington Post. It goes on here where she says, most of those people, my family, extended family, are not pro-choice. You think I'm kicking them out of the Democratic Party? Question mark. And I bring this up as well because Nancy Pelosi right now is showing two sides of the same face. Because while she's telling people we have to make sure we codified Roe v. Wade, you got to vote for Dems in midterms so that Republicans don't take away a woman's right to choose. At the same time, she has endorsed Henry Cuellar, her and Jim Clyburn. And Jim Clyburn is supposed to be a part of the progressive caucus. He's not progressive. Seems like anyone can join this team now. And both of them have endorsed Henry Cuellar, who is pro-life in Texas. So I'm sure Delilah's familiar with him, against the progressive candidate, Jessica Cisneros, who is pro-choice. So they're showing both sides of their ass right now. So and people see it. People are waking up to it. So when people ask us, like, why are you attacking the Democrats? Because they're the ones who pretend to be one way, but behind closed doors, they're just as conservative as the Republicans are. I hand it back to you, Josana.
The reason why I want to go back a little bit on Obama is because, like Nancy Pelosi, I've never in my life could think that a white woman like Nancy Pelosi could ever be on my side. So to me, she's a clear vision that the Democrats are not playing on my side. They are not. They have Nancy Pelosi. But Obama was used as this first Black president of the most powerful nation in the world. Like, I was in Brazil, like, of course, everybody was cheering around the world and expecting him to be the hero. But if you get the speech that Obama is giving in Flint, when he pretends to drink the water, and this speech that you just showed us, I mean, you have to see with these two speeches that this man is talking against his own community. He is a traitor of his own people. And that's what he have to do. Well, not like as a victim, that's a choice he has to take, right? And he chose to serve the establishment over Black people's lives. In both cases.
Well said. Well said. Joe brought up the poverty issue, which I think is incredibly important. Many have abortions because of poverty. We need to set a standard of living for everyone. And I 100% agree. And this is the thing when people say, if this is overturned or when this is overturned, it's just going to bring the rights back to the states. And they say this as if that's okay. That's not going to be okay because some states are going to make this more restrictive than others. So, for example, Louisiana is one of those states that's we're already trying to make it very difficult for you to have an abortion. So then what can happen? If you need to have this done, you're going to have to leave the state, go to another state to get an abortion. But what if the state that you live in makes it criminal for you to leave the state and have an abortion in another state? And having lived down south, that is something that could really happen. I'm just telling you, that's going to be the problem. And people who have money, like wealthy women, this is not going to be an issue for them. They can go fly wherever they want to and get this done. They can have a private doctor come to them and do it under wraps. So I think people really believe that this is going to stop women from getting abortions, and it's not. People will still get them just like they did decades before. But what's going to happen for women who are poor and women who are working class, and particularly women of color, that means you're putting yourself at risk because now you're trying to get this done through, they used to call them back alley abortions. They're trying to get them done through ways that are not as safe. And now your health is at risk. So just handing it over to the states is not an end all or should not be an end all be all. And I do not see that as a better option. I do want to open that up to everyone as well.
So I can say from being here in Texas, it is obviously a very unsafe option for people. And with the laws in Mississippi and Louisiana and places like that, the end goal is to criminalize this to the point that people are in jail for it. So if you have an abortion, they're going to charge you for killing somebody, and then you are going to jail for that. So it's always about control. And of course they want to control people that are poor. That's never not been the focus of these kind of agendas. I did a Mother's Day special with some other candidates in California, And we were talking about abortion rights, and I just brought up the fact that First Peoples have always had methods to prevent unwanted pregnancies. It's just our broken healthcare system that doesn't understand or want to acknowledge that it's essential for a functioning society. It's always been essential for a functioning society. So it's not even about individual rights. It, as a whole, as a society, it's essential that people have access to abortion and people have access to preventative care. And it's just insane to keep, everybody wants to throw it in a box. They're like, no, it only means this. If you support abortion, because listen, I get hate mail all the time. It's really funny because people are like, you're a baby killer, or you're a person who doesn't care about people. And I'm like, define people, because I bet that's where we're going to find differences, because there are some people y'all care about and there are some that you do not. And this imaginary person is worth more money, power, influence, legislation than any other poor kid I ever went to school with, or any other person from my community. You don't care about us, and they never have. It's you think about all the money, like you were like talking about Nancy Pelosi, and I was like, yeah, she is two-faced. Like she's been talking about a public option since '93, right? That's 2 decades ago, almost 3. And you know, they're just, who do they serve? The corporate party, who stands to make more money off of unwanted babies growing up in poverty. I mean, I can obviously think of like the military and prison industrial complexes, but don't forget the healthcare agencies. They never, you know, don't have stake in it. So for me, it's just like it boils my blood. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, I'm glad people are talking about abortion rights now. I would have liked, you know, some time ago for people to be up in arms about it. I heard that we were going to riot or something if Roe v. Wade was overturned, but all I hear is like apologies for Biden and things like that. So I'm just curious what's happening right now, you know?
You know, I was
Speaking
thinking,
of, go ahead, Kim.
what I was going to say was, hopefully we are not going to get to the point where, like it was pre-Roe, where we're having women trying to seek, as you said, Sabby, so-called back alley abortions. Abortions are able to be medical abortions are able to be administered at home via medication, right? So it's important that we, number one, spread the information that even in abortion restrictive states, there are already and have been for some time Black and Brown led abortion funds that have been making sure that women who are the most vulnerable, the most susceptible to either having an unwanted pregnancy and bringing a child into poverty, or just having a situation that they really not ready for. They have been providing services to these women for a long time. So it's important that we identify those funds and those organizations and do our best to support them materially, make people aware that they exist on the ground, and get the money directly into their hands. A lot of the on the ground abortion funds, it's better to get the money to them than it is to say like a Planned Parenthood or a NARAL, because they don't do the kind of work to try to secure transport and housing and funds to women so they can travel to states where abortions are not as restrictive, right? So it's important that we identify these funds and make sure that we amplify their work, but also make women aware and pregnant people aware. You have to be cognizant of your body, right? So you have to know, obviously now in these red states, you got to know when you have missed that period, when you are pregnant, you have to be paying very, very close attention, because your window of utilizing a medical abortion via medication could be relatively small. So it's important that we make sure that our communities are informed about how their bodies work. So if a missed period or a potential pregnancy is there, people can take the next steps instead of waiting weeks and weeks and potentially months and months, and then you're running out of options. So I think it's important for us, especially, to utilize our platforms to make people aware that these abortion funds specifically exist, and they are there already, willing to help folks who are in search of these services.
Yes. There's another clip I want to show everyone. I'm not sure if everyone has seen this, but this is about the connection between abortion, capitalism, and population decline. So I'm going to go ahead and share this. Eric, I'm gonna have to share my screen for this one because I forgot to put this one in type VNC. Yes, this is the one. So I don't know if everyone's aware. This is about 1 minute and 32 seconds. I think she did a good job here comparing this to capitalism and the population decline. So let me play this.
I think it's important that we bring back this conversation to eliminate any confusion that people may have. And that is first to understand that we live in a capitalist society. Second is to understand that the birth rate in America is the lowest it's ever been in American history. You have women who are choosing not to have kids. You have teen pregnancy at the lowest rate it's ever been in American history. Then you have the highest mortality rate, and it's 4 times more for Black women. Women are literally losing their lives trying to give birth. And so what that means and what the fear is in American society and economy is who's going to replace the workforce. The biggest fear in the American economy is the shortage of labor. This is exactly why Texas was first with the anti-abortion ban. You need physical bodies in order to keep the capitalist wheel going. This affects Black and brown communities because you have to think about the pipeline into incarceration. Jail is a business. There's actual stocks for profit when it comes to jail. And you have to think about who's profiting off of this and the bodies that are filling the jail cells. Aside from the fact that we don't have mandatory maternity leave, we don't have free childcare. Inflation and the cost of living is the highest it's ever been in American history. There's no support for women who are actually choosing to have kids. A woman should always have a choice.
Thoughts?
I was about to say that exact thing. I was about to say all of that exactly. So I'm really mad I didn't interject before. Because I swear I was. Because I mean, when you look at stuff like California, for example, you know, as climate change persists, California's firefighter, you know, the firefighters are made up of mainly prisoners. And as that depletes, they're not having enough firefighters. Right. And as she was saying in the video, you know, a lot of the of what drives the economy in America is actually a lot of prison labor. And I just think that it's interesting when we're sitting here talking about this issue, we've got each other. We're talking about ways that we can protect ourselves, ways that we can help extend our own lives, resources, things like that. When you hear somebody on the other side talk about forcing someone to have a child, saying they're pro-life, I don't hear a lot of the resources being offered after that. I don't hear a lot of people saying, and this is what you do here. This is where you can go. Here is a place where you can come and rely on. It's like, and then you're on your own. You know, figure it out. And you should have a family. You better, or otherwise that's your fault on your, another thing on your own. But there's no actual economic steps being put into place to make anybody secure enough to even have a child. And another thing, just kind of maybe sidebar, but like the microplastics and stuff that has been depleting men's sperm count for like the past decade. If you they don't really care about fixing any of these things. They just want us to replace, you know, the workforce. And it really does seem that way, because if you really cared about humanity, you would see these things and fix it. And they're not doing that, you know?
I mean, we have a baby formula shortage right now. I don't think they really are that invested in life. You know, they're invested in feeding the machine. Like, we're human stock. That's what we are. And it's sad, but it's the truth. You know, that's how it is. I could die and I am a mother. I have kids. Like, if I got pregnant and was not able to abort, I would probably die. And that's probably what some people would be happy about. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, they're not going to feed my kids who are orphans now. They don't really care about life. They care about control.
And for people who say, I hear a lot of people, they bring up adoption sometimes as if it's something that's very simple to do. The problem is, even with adoption, you're still pregnant for those full 9 months. So you still have to go to medical appointments. That costs money. So if you don't have the money to have the baby, a lot of times you don't have the money to pay the doctor bills every time you have to go in. And don't forget, delivering a baby actually costs a lot of money. If you ask anyone who's had a baby, ask them how much their medical expenses were after they delivered that baby. So that's still debt. Is still tying you to debt. I think someone was going to interject, or someone was speaking. Josan.
I was just going to bring up that the fact I'm a bit embarrassed because it's a bit capitalist to think the way I'm thinking right now. But in my country, abortions are illegal. So of course that the people that are being targeted with birth deaths and after treatment and rape and all horrible things that happen are poor women, Black poor women, Indigenous poor women, right? And the fact that abortion is illegal makes me think about the huge amount of children living in the streets. You have children homelessness in Brazil is a high number. It's 10% of the total number of homeless people. You have children that are born in these streets and they grow in these streets. So like you have illegal abortion and you also don't have, and we have universal health care. We have a system that's a unique healthcare system, but you don't have any assistance for the women, any educational, like nothing to support the woman to not, for example, get pregnant. So that's going to start happening here. And I think it's more and more, all the time when I'm in a panel like this, I feel like it's more and more like the Brazil I grew up in.
That's interesting, Josanna. I have a couple comments here. Give 'em the boot said, Dems failing on Roe v. Wade for 50 years. If they worked as hard to codify as the Republicans tried to destroy it, then I would say both, but the Dems sat on their asses. That was Give 'em boot. Robert said, on top of that, Dems embrace anti-abortion candidates. Hillary selected Tim Kaine, and Pelosi is supporting an anti-abortion candidate right now in Texas. That's Queller. Thank you for the super chat, Cyril. The truth of the matter is that my policies are so mainstream that if they had set the same policies that I had back in the 1980s, I would be considered a moderate Republican. That's coming from Barack Obama. Joy said, as George Carlin said, they, religious zealots and conservatives, are not pro-life. They are anti-women. And thank you for this super chat, Craig. As are pro-lifers, anti-war, pro-welfare, and supporters of public health care. Not pro-life then. That's a good point. Thank you for that, Craig. Northern Witch says they're not pro-life, they're pro-forced birth. They don't give a damn after the child is here. And thank you for this super chat, Reverend Edmund Bolella. Everyone support the Sabby Sab Show. Great discussion. Thank you so much for that as well. So I think most of you have seen this article that came out. I put it in the group, but in reference to maternity care. So Louisiana senator accidentally said the quiet part out loud. Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy, our maternal death rates are only bad if you count Black women. Now, this was recent. This article was published May 20th this year.
Look at
there's the senator. And I'm not going to read the entire thing, obviously, but this portion right here. In an interview with Politico, the following words came out of Cassidy's mouth. About a third of our population is African American. African Americans have a higher incidence of maternal mortality. So if you correct our population for race, we're not as much of an outlier as it otherwise appear. Now, I say that not to minimize the issue, but to focus the issue as to where it would be. For whatever reason, people of color have a higher incidence of maternal mortality.
For whatever reason.
Why is that? I'm opening this up to the people.
I said the same thing, Kim. I just said for whatever reason.
For whatever reason. Now I'm curious, like now is Bill Cassidy suggesting that we only count 3/5 of Black maternal deaths? I mean, is these the kind of fractions that white men are comfortable with? Anything that's not a them gets reduced down to a fraction, or you can exclude it altogether because it doesn't count. It's not white, not male, and a myriad of other things. I mean, that is really a repugnant comment, but it is a very honest comment. It is very much reflective of whom these elected officials, and in this case conservatives, but fuck, we could even extend this very easily out to Democrats, in the sense that Democrats are clearly anti-life themselves, with Joe Biden authorizing tens of billions more going to the war machine in Ukraine and failing to fund COVID mitigations here in the US. We're going to have a vaccine deficit. We're not doing free testing anymore in the US. So the Democrats don't give a shit about people living or dying here in the US too, but under different circumstances. But circling back to what Senator Cassidy said, it is repugnant, because obviously Senator Cassidy does not represent all the needs of all Louisianans. I feel horrible for Black people in Louisiana if that's their senator. He doesn't even recognize their humanity as people to even say that they deserve to be acknowledged when it comes to counting this very atrocious statistic, which is all tied into race and class. It is racism that makes Black woman mortality during pregnancy and childbirth 3 times as high, 4 times as high. I'm not sure what it is in Louisiana. I'm sure it's preposterous, a preposterous statistic, whatever it is. But I'm sure Black women are dying at exponentially higher rates during childbirth and pregnancy than white women in Louisiana. And it's Cassidy. Yes, Cassidy doesn't even want to acknowledge that they exist or that this even happens. And the amount of poor Black women in Louisiana who outright lack access to prenatal care and adequate health care when they are delivering their babies is amongst the worst in the country as well. So what does this tell us? This tells us that we need to laser focus in some of these red abortion restrictive states to our communities, because clearly they are going to need outside assistance. They cannot depend on their elected officials for anything, not to even acknowledge them as human, let alone make sure that they have access to the resources that will keep them alive and be able to make whatever decision that they so choose to make for themselves.
I agree with you there. But I guess I would expand to that to say that, doesn't this prove that, I mean, no one cares about Black women? Like, doesn't this statistic just make us think like a Black woman choosing to have abortion is like our own, taking in our own mortality into account, because that's how often it is that our needs will be ignored and we could die from something like this. But the fact that we know that this is a statistic and an issue, I think even Kamala Harris, when she was trying to fix her image earlier last year, she said, you know, I'm talking about fibroids, when she was getting interviewed by Charlemagne the God.
She did. Mm-hmm.
What kind of policy are we doing to protect Black women's lives? And where are the bills, instead of for Juneteenth, but the bills for Black women having some kind of insurance free of care, whatever it is? But it's just like, it's all of them, because even if you want to talk about it and say, oh, it's an issue I'm aware about, there is no action. And that is what is like the most aggravating to me, because we know that people are actually dying. Black women are actually dying from this. And there are basically no other options. I mean, either to have a child, you could be, plagued almost to a whole life of poverty, and you don't know what your kid is going to, what life you can give your child because of the economic state that we have right now. But also, I mean, I saw something really, just touching on Twitter, where a girl, she was talking about how her mom died childbirth. And she was just like, my mom had a full life. I had 2 older brothers and sisters, right? She was important in her community. She was important to my dad. If I didn't get born, I wouldn't have known. But she was forced, because I think she was a Hispanic, she was a Latina woman. She was very religious. And, there was basically no choice because of her religion. Mm-hmm. But then to have to carry that around as the child, is another trauma too. And it's like, so we're not really thinking about the humanity of people or what people's life experience is going to be or anything like that. And so it's just like all of it. I'm sick of the no action. I'm sick of us knowing these statistics, knowing these facts. But the thing that also points out to this is COVID. This to me made me think of COVID. Because once white people figured out that they weren't dying from COVID, they were like, it's not really that big of a deal, is it?
Yeah.
Because the people who are on the front lines and the people who are in more poverty are the people who are dying. And so once that kind of became known, they really lessened up on a lot of the restrictions and a lot of the things that they were willing to pay for as well.
Yeah, a lot of the aids that were.
So I think, it's all racialized. And so, yes, this guy said it out loud, but that's what they're all thinking.
Sad but true.
Well, it's just interesting to me the fact that he said, well, if you count Black women, which basically meant that he doesn't even consider, when they talk about women, he wasn't even considering Black women. He was only looking at a certain type of woman. So he didn't even put Black women into that same equation. And again, like I said, like he was saying the quiet part out loud, and he got roasted over this on Twitter, But another thing I want to point to as well, apparently there are a couple of corporations that claim to be, pro women's rights that are also funding anti-abortion politicians. And this has been going on since 2016. So I want to show you the picture, because the picture has all the companies on it. So we'll have to go through the whole article. I should have known Walmart would be one of them. Right. Before I even looked at this, I was like, I should have known. So here's the picture.
Google.
So here are all the companies that have ads and claim to be pro women's rights, but at the same time, they are also funding anti-abortion politicians. So that includes Coca-Cola, GM, Comcast. By the way, Comcast supported Joe Biden, funded him. AT&T, CVS, Walmart, Amazon, Verizon, Citi, Google, Walgreens, Wells Fargo, and T-Mobile. Thoughts?
Amazon needs workers.
Yeah. Oddly enough, it seems like the only ones that don't have low-wage workers are like Google, Citibank, Wells Fargo, or maybe T-Mobile, but all of the rest of them need low-wage workers.
All of them, because Google has products too that need to be sold. So all of them all over the world, anti-abortion politics, always.
I think what this tells me is they're not willing to stand on any kind of principle to not give these assholes money. Because I bet if you look, I bet they've all funded Democrats too. I bet that they've funded, Democrats that say that they're pro-choice. I bet they funded almost everybody in the House and the Senate. You know what I mean? I don't think that they're looking at abortion as one of the things, but what it tells me is they're not willing to stand on that principle to not give them money. They're not willing to stand on any principle to not give them money, because at the end of the day, they don't give a shit what they stand for as long as they get their corporate bailouts, as long as they get their tax cuts. They don't care what happens to us as a people.
Yeah, I mean, most politicians, they don't have any principles to stand on. That's why they need a podium. They can be louder than everybody else,
but
and not making any promises they're willing to keep.
I
wish they had to wear their logos, right? Like the NASCAR drivers.
That would be helpful.
Google funded me to make sure that your niece died because she couldn't get an abortion, just so that everybody knows. I think that's fair.
That'd be amazing.
I'll show you too, because one of the things, I think it was the first one, they even mention the ads that they have. So when they start with the corporations, was Amazon the first one? Yep, Amazon was the first one. So they say, right, for example, here's an example with Amazon. Today we celebrate International Women's Day and honor the collective strength of women around the globe, across the globe. Together we can break the bias in our communities, workplaces, schools, and beyond to achieve a gender equal world. But at the same time, they donated over $974,000 to anti-abortion political committees. So but I like that they did that. I can put the link to this article in the chat for people who want to go in depth with this. But they mentioned like, well, yes, they do all of this, celebrate Women's Equality Day. We believe in women's rights, but at the same time, they're playing for both teams. At the same time, they're still supporting politicians who don't support it.
But that's also why I was like why I feel like the Democrats not coming down on an actual side. We actually had this discussion too, kind of about defund the police earlier this week with other people. Mm-hmm. But I think because they will not pick a side and make a stance and stand for something and say no, because sometimes people just like the Republicans sometimes because they will not waver in what it is that they want. A lot of people in this country have daddy issues. That's just what it is. A lot of people want to be told what to do. And like, I'm serious for real. And like the Democrats are just too kind of like just like, oh, sure, whatever goes.
And
like, when you try whatever.
When you only have two, I mean, of course, we're trying very hard to have more than two parties. But obviously right now we're stuck in this duopoly. And when you're stuck in a duopoly, you got to pick a side.
Yeah. Like, how do you go between somebody who's staunchly like no pro-life and then the other side's like, well, we're kind of in the middle. I mean,
like, there is no in the middle.
Then you don't really
exactly
see a good fight.
But that's what I think it's happening. I don't think they are not picking a side. I think by co-opting the speech, they are showing that they are picking a side because it has been a long time. We have a Black president as a form of comparison. It's not going to change. They picked a side a long time ago. And decided just saw the logos, and it is what it is. It's not even passionate or a secret cause. No, money. That's the side they picked, and we need to know that to move on because there is no more. Oh, we shouldn't talk like that. Like no. We should talk like that, and we should not vote. For example, we should talk. We should have these hard conversations because like change is not gonna come if we see both sides. Like. The other day I was watching this video and this Republican senator in a state, and it's in the South, and I forgot the state. Sorry, COVID gives like memory problems. He was in a hearing with a doctor, a gynecologist. And then he says like, what if the baby is half born and the mother decides to abort? Do you support that? I mean, we don't hear that anymore and think, yeah. And she was like, I'm sorry, I'm not like, you were like creating a language that doesn't exist. Right. But like that we know about the Republicans, we know about them. And now we are getting to know about the Democrats. And that's the work that each and every one of you is doing to unmask them. And then we can know as a people what is needed to be done.
Right. No, I think, both parties support corporate interests. This is why, and they play this game every time around. And this is something I noticed too, this Supreme Court leak per se. Was it an accident or was it on purpose? Was this a card that the Democratic Party had in their back pocket and they're just ready to pull it out now because they realize they're going to get slaughtered in the midterms, right? So they had plenty of time that they could have codified Roe v. Wade into law. And I think they held on to this issue for when they would need it most. So the fact that now they're trying to point fingers, and Elizabeth Warren too, with her theatrics, they're trying to point fingers at, it's the Republican Party, it's all their fault, and da-da-da. And I'm like, when people were protesting outside the Supreme Court Justice homes, they should have been protesting outside some of these politicians that are in the Senate and in Congress as well as the Democratic politicians. They should be protesting at their houses too, because that's the thing. It's not just on the right like this. It's a corporate issue. Both parties are corporate. And they support policies that serve corporate interests. And that's why they don't do anything for us. That's why we don't really get anything unless we get out in the streets. And so this is why I tell people when they say, well, if you don't vote for Democrats, well, then you're letting the other side win. Bro, they're both on the same fucking side.
I heard something crazy. I think it was on Bad Faith or something the other day. But like, I mean, I think there is also the reality that the Democrats may need to lose and may need to lose and know that they lost for a reason. Because it's like, how long can you have people like basically spit in your face like this? And we still support because we're trying to do the right thing, but it's not actually pushing any progress. So it's like, how, like, at some point we got to try something different.
Yeah, people need to be really seriously really think about just withholding their votes altogether. You can't think of it as, oh, that's a vote for the other side or whatever. It is, they need to feel the sting of not getting our votes, you know, because they're not doing anything for us. So why would we?
I've been calling for a voter strike, man. Hold your vote, hold your money, don't do anything until they do something, because the Democrats want to lose. They want to be able to keep their seats for another 20, 10 years, however long some of these people, you know, they're in their 80s, but whatever, you know, they want to keep their damn seats. So they love when this pendulum swings to the right and then swings to the left, because then they can be like, the last party sucked. They didn't do their thing. Getting a majority is a freaking nightmare. They want the Senate to stay split so that they can, you know, do their damn thing, and they can then say, oh, it's this side or it's that side. They don't want to win. That's why they throw these races in some of these places, or they don't run people, because they don't actually want to have a a
That is such an
They
excellent
lost
point.
before.
Like
They lost before. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're right, Jasana. I mean, look at what happened under Trump. I mean, you haven't seen the Democrats more galvanized until Donald Trump got elected. I mean, everything, the fundraising machine was popping. The organization, you know, DNCC was popping. MSNBC was popping. Like, they get off on losing, right? They get off on being the losers, because every time that they do get in power, they don't govern as though they want to remain in power. I think I agree fully with, like, the Democrats are evergreen losers, and that is a position that they relish being in, because I guess that's where they find themselves more powerful, when they are not in power. So.
Well, I would say one big tell that I see, that you guys were talking about Elizabeth Warren. I think one big tell is that they don't want anything to change. Is that when you are at this point, right? If you were at this point where you truly believed in Medicare for all or free college or any of these things, and there was a breaking point and you could have backed Bernie Sanders or backed Joe Biden, and you choose not to do that, you choose not to propel someone into a position that could change the world, right? To put yourself out of it, right? There's no selflessness that was in Elizabeth Warren. And so for her to be out there kind of like talking like she's shouting about, you tried to paint a man as sexist, which hurts actual women who deal with sexism and misogyny and shit for your own benefit. We know you took the $14 million in the PAC money, and you kneecapped all of us, quite frankly. And all these women did it. Hillary Clinton did it because she wanted to be in power. RBG did it because she wanted to, you know, she wanted to be replaced by somebody, whatever. It's just like, it's so disgusting to me, like, that it's this display, you know, like, if the Republicans, when they have a goal, they all then get behind that and really try to do that, or they get that person out. Look at what they did to Madison Cawthorn. Look at what they did to Liz Cheney. They put their shit on blast. But then it's like, okay, Elizabeth Warren, if you want to be crying right now, but you weren't there backing when we had a chance of real progress. And that's why I can't believe them anymore. Because when I look back at stuff, I'm like, okay, but why didn't you just put yourself out of it and help us? And you didn't. And that's why I'm like, I can't believe you now when you're sitting here shouting about this stuff.
Right.
Do you know if the 100% of the... Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I just wanted to know if 100% of the population doesn't vote, or like 50% plus one, if they don't go to vote, do you have to cancel the elections and launch a referendum here too?
I don't think
to change the.
If we only have 1% of the people show up, I think they'll count
like it that
1% and be like, oh, well, that's it.
Yeah, they probably would.
That's democracy.
Yeah, because
democracy with the 3Ks.
Right.
That one.
yeah, because Josanna,
No.
majority of Americans don't vote. So it's not like we have like enormous numbers coming out to vote anyway, but the majority of people like don't vote. And in reference to Elizabeth Warren, you know, she's a funny one because she's my state senator. We like not to claim her sometimes, but I want people to realize that Elizabeth Warren knew that she had no chance of winning. She knew she had zero chance of winning when she ran in 2020. And she stayed in the race when we went into Super Tuesday here in Massachusetts. And I honestly believe had she not stayed in on Super Tuesday, a lot of her votes would have gone to Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders could have possibly won Massachusetts instead of getting second after Joe Biden. But she did that, and she did it on purpose. She knew she couldn't win. So that woman with me, don't even get me started with her. But you're right. How can she sit up there and call, Bernie like this sexist and all that during the debates? And then now she's like, oh, we're friends and we got to look out for women's rights. And it's all theater, you guys. And what I want people to understand, a lot of these issues that we're fighting for, whether it's on the left or whatever people want to call themselves nowadays, progressive, socialist, whatever, those are class issues. And I mentioned this on RBN on Friday. I'm going to stop calling these progressive issues. I'm going to call them what they really are, class issues. People who are poor, people who are working class, even some people who are middle class now, they need health care. People who are wealthy, they're all set. When it comes to free community college and free public universities, that's a class issue. When you talk about paid family leave, that's a class issue. And I think I'm going to change the framing of that, because once you start saying it's a left or a progressive issue, you're going to lose people on the other side because they're going to disassociate it with it just because it has a D under it. They're like, oh, it's a Democrat. That's a Democrat thing. And they're all socialists. But these are class issues. And that's how I want to address it to people going forward.
I think that's fair. Oh, sorry. You want to?
No. I was just going to say, when it comes to this issue of abortion rights and reproductive justice, this, and I said this on my show, this is the first rolling back of rights that white folks are actually feeling, right? Specifically white women and white people who can get pregnant, because the rolling back of voting rights has been affecting Black and brown people for a very long time. General issues surrounding constitutional rights and civil rights have been affecting specifically Black and brown people for a very long time. And a lot of so-called liberals and moderates and centrists just sort of wrung their hands and be like, oh, that's too bad. Black people have to wait in line for 10 hours in Georgia in order to vote. Gosh, I wish there was something we could do about that. But they very much go on about their business, because that is not an issue that affects them directly. That only affects Black and brown people. But now when you start telling white suburban parents that perhaps their daughter or, whomever gets pregnant unexpectedly, that they may not have access to legally obtain an abortion, well, then that makes people sit up, right? That makes them want to do something about it, or at least presents it that the ball is now in their court, right? Like, no, this rolling back of issues is no longer simply a Black and brown thing. Now it's affecting white people. And now we're kind of seeing this reactionary shtick around that.
Right. I think the Democratic Party, I'm going to pass it to you, Delilah, because I know you're running for office, third party. The Democratic Party has watered down the term progressive. They really co-opted the progressive movement because Bernie Sanders basically handed what was left of his movement over to the Democratic Party by giving them email lists that came from us. And they have watered down the progressive movement. And now anybody can call themselves progressive. If you look at some of these new candidates that are running right now, Summer Lee, John Fetterman, who also said in interviews that he's not progressive, they're still calling him progressive. So they've co-opted this term and they've watered it down. And that's why I don't like using that term to refer to these issues, because people are just like, oh, well, yeah. What was her name? Nina Turner's opponent, Shontel Brown. She's calling herself a progressive. It doesn't mean anything anymore. This is why you can't let the Democratic Party get involved in movements, because they co-opted, just like they did with Black Lives Matter. And Bernie Sanders should have known better the second time around. After they screwed him over in 2016, in 2020, he should have ran independent or third party. I'll pass it to you, Delilah.
Oh, I just had a couple of notes like I wanted to bring up. It is hard running as a third party candidate, especially in a state like this where a lot of people don't vote because they don't feel represented. They're like, why would I bother? And the voters are disenfranchised on purpose by both parties. And a lot of people aren't even aware of that, but that's the truth. Like the Democrats at one point were in charge of gerrymandering the counties, and now it's the Republicans' field. And people don't want to talk about that, but that's the reality of politics. Is like it's supposed to be an illusion of a choice. If you don't break through the illusion, you're not really going to have a choice because you're not willing, you know what I'm saying, to at least be aware of what's happening. And I just want, it's human rights issues. So it's like, I don't want to frame it as one side's purpose or issue because they're just basic human rights issues. We talk about where the bar is, and the bar is so low. It is so low right now. And even progressive politicians are saying, oh, well, I support universal health care. Even though they stabbed Bernie in the back, they want to say that they believe in progressive health care. But they're not even willing. I mean, say we did have universal health care, which I do support. Josana brought up a point that doesn't safeguard people from the poor, mismanaged medical care they get. It doesn't even. We're lacking more and more human rights and even access to our most basic human rights. And it's not a left or right issue. It is a human rights issue because we are all kind of stuck on this. And I love to tell people, they're like, oh, well, hopefully what happened in Texas won't happen everywhere else. That's exactly what's going to happen because that's how it's supposed to happen. Unless enough of us say, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. Like people were like, Delilah, we got to get people to knock on doors. And I was like, no, you do not. No, not for me. Because like, I think that that's rude. I think that I'm not going to be that disconnected person who's like, I know what's best for you. Please donate, but don't tell me how you feel. I'm sick of it. I never wanted to be a politician. I promise. I was just so fucking desperate and frustrated that I was like, you know what? I got to do something. You know what I'm saying? If I just urge everybody to at least inform themselves, right? Like just look at just look at some of the bills going on in your district. Just try and pay attention because it should alarm you. People think we're so scary and loud or we're doomers, but it's like, this is just the writing on the wall. I just want you to be able to, you know what I'm saying, to at least acknowledge that it's there. That's my battle every day. People are like, oh, segregation isn't real. And I'm like, where do you live? Because I'm glad it doesn't for you. Okay. But it does for other people. And that's just where it is right now. And so I am a little disgusted that it's framed, oh, this person's a champion for women's rights. Oh, why? How? What are they going to be consistent? I don't see any consistency. So I get it. People are tired. And if people don't want to vote, I can't blame them,
I'm going to go to some of these comments really quick. Thank you for this philosophical thirst worms. There could have been such a messaging bonus if so many of these abortion groups were staunchly anti-jab mandate. Feels like a missed opportunity. Thank you for that. And Egg64, thank you for the super chat. Some are even going as far to try and ban Plan B pills. So damn petty. Thank you for this, Salgato. Menstrual extraction parties. I don't know what that's about, Salgato. Thank you for this, Debo, the Black Panther. Realize both parties are anti-abortion. They both want workers to labor while they collect their fat checks and perks. And I want to give a shout out to CR for becoming a new Sabby member. And thank you for this, Reverend Edmund Bolella. Democrats have rhetoric, but no actionable reality. And for Joy, MSNBC's Lawrence O'Donnell spilled the beans. The Democrats don't have to do a damn thing because they know we have no other choice.
Yep, pretty much.
I actually was wondering, I don't know if you have a question about this, but I was wondering what y'all think, like, when they continue to do these kind of things, because this also opens up a vulnerability for gay marriage and many interracial marriage, many other things. Like, do you think that this is done on purpose because there is no other economic, they're not willing to move economically anymore for the working class? I mean, the minimum wage has not raised. I really honestly thought I thought Biden was going to do a lot of terrible things, but at least with these, the amount of reconciliation that the Democrats had, I thought that they would pass some form of paid family leave. I mean, that didn't even pass during a pandemic. The talk of a public option never happened. Like it's just like, I don't know. Yeah. What do you guys think? Do you think that because they don't want to talk about do anything actually economically, that they're going to continue to dangle this stuff back and forth for the rest of our lives?
I don't think
what I observe is.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Josanna.
I was like, go, you go. I go after you.
Oh, okay. I don't expect anything at the federal level, to be quite honest, because the Democrats, as we have well established here, that both parties are owned jointly by the corporations and by political action committees. They are both incentivized to do fuck all, right, for all of us. Where I think we're going to see movement, and thank you, Sabby, because now I don't even want to say progress, because what is progress? What is progress? But where I think that we're going to see movement is where it's always been. It's going to be at the local level, and it's going to be in your states. Now, I live in Maryland. Maryland is not as progressive as advertised, as I've loved to infamously tell people. But at the same time, there are certain things that Maryland is going to do and do decently. So our state legislature here actually expanded the amount and the kind of medical professionals who can actually perform abortions, for example. Don't quote me on this, but I want to say like midwives and like maybe nurse practitioners, but other people besides doctors are going to have access to training in order to be able to perform more abortions. Now, our Republican governor, even though the Democratic legislature passed this funding, the Republican governor, Larry Hogan, look out for him, player to watch on the GOP side for the presidential 2024. But he is withholding this funding. Obviously, he's trying to get up his conservative chops to be more palatable for mainstream GOPers. But it's going to happen, right? That's it. He is just a temporary stumbling block for the moment, but this funding is going to get out to those who need it. Here we have raised our state minimum wage. The state legislature here passed a Family Medical Leave Act of sorts, where families do get some paid leave, sick time off, or parental leave. So all the policies that we are clamoring and demanding that our national Democratic leaders at least present and sort of come to some sort of framework around it. In bluer states, these things are already being passed. They are being enacted, and we need to just push for more of that. As much as you can, I know not everybody lives in a blue state, and trust me, blue states are not the end all be all, but for right now, they are temporary, I suppose, refuges of some sort of modicum of progress.
That's great. No, I mean, anything that helps the patients. So like the doulas, the midwives, those grassroots, actual on the ground providing services people are who need the most funding. And I would tell anybody to withhold your money from politicians in order to give to these types of groups that are offering, like because they do the mail order, medicine, things like that. But again, this is just these laws are very ableist in my mind too, because not everybody understands when their periods are. Not everybody understands, we were talking about a lack of education, but a lack of actual health too is influencing people and leaving us vulnerable to unwanted pregnancies and things like that. So, I mean, there's so many failures legislatively all over the state. I love trying to get people involved in activism more than anything else, because it's very, first of all, empowering, but then you're doing your work for your community in whatever way you can. And it's like everybody can help, so I'm glad to hear that they're making some progress. I'm afraid of that word too, because George Bush was from here. And he used that word a lot, and it didn't mean what you wanted it to mean. So, but I'm glad to hear some good news, you know?
Oh, Josana, I think you were gonna. Yeah.
Thank you. I think they do it on purpose. I think they don't codify laws. I think they speak like they are almost on our side with a purpose. And the only purpose is to be elected, and it's to have people to pressure. And I think you have to see like they are less and less doing that. So they are bringing more and more the conversation about funding the police, for example. And fascism never shows itself like, ta-da, it's happening now. No, it's little by little, because if they come the way they were, if they were coming to us like the Republicans come, we would resist, because that's how they come inside our homes outside of here. They kick the door, they throw a bomb, they throw a coup d'etat. They do that, and we radicalize. We're like, whoa, no, that's my house. I'm not going to do that, right? So that's why people in the so-called third world country are so radicalized and fight back. That's why Palestinian children are throwing rocks on Israeli soldiers, because they are literally getting their houses and settling on it.
Yep.
And the U.S. is now, the Democrats are now starting to bring that to its own citizens. And that's why they're funding the police, they're creating more and more laws so we can break them and go to jail.
Right. They know what's coming. They know it's coming. That's why they keep giving more and more money to the police. And if you go all the way back to Obama's presidency, you'll see the police funding number continue to increase through each president. Joe Biden has given the police the most, more than Trump and Obama.
He's giving them COVID money. So, you know, the states were refusing to spend that, what, $614 billion. They were holding on to that shit even when Trump was in office. And then we just see, you know, Biden saying that that money is going to go to fund the police. And he's encouraging the states to to further fund the privatized prison industry, to further militarize our police. No wonder the states didn't want to spend this, because I think this was going to come down the pike no matter who was president. I think this was the plan all along. That's just my opinion, but I think that they were holding on to that money so that they could give it to their funders and they could spend it on the privatized industries that have bankrolled these state houses and these gubernatorial ships.
It seemed like Biden was ready. I mean, Biden was ready to fund the police heavily from the jump anyways, which was alarming because he did run on that and people literally ignored it, you know, just because he wasn't Trump.
Well, it was on his website. He didn't make a big deal of it, but it was there on his website.
But that's it. I mean, that's who he is. That's who he's been. Jim Crow Joe, Crime Bill Joe. But Joe has always been friend to the police.
Yes, always. He made cops program.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Right.
No,
so Biden is more, he is so on brand with himself right now. I don't think there has been a more on brand presidency besides Joe Biden for all the things that he's doing. And again, I can't, looking at what's happening in Ukraine, and you know, to be honest, I have not been paying a whole lot of attention to what's happening to Ukraine. All I see is billions of dollars going over to Ukraine, while U.S. people, our residents here are suffering, dealing with, we went to Safeway last night. Do y'all know how much Safeway was asking for a steak? Do you have any idea? Safeway was asking $53 for a steak, y'all, for a steak. And then listen, I'm like, if I had children, if I had actual mouths to feed right now, like this situation would, I mean, it's already very dire, but I can totally see how the situation is increasingly getting more desperate by the day for everybody else. And the fact that here we are, local governments are not doing much, federal governments are not doing much, which is why the need for all of us to organize and be able to, crowdsource each other and crowdsource the organizations that are on the ground, getting people food, getting people the food pantries, making sure that gas cards are being supplied to folks, and if and Metro cards to the extent that people need to get transportation back and forth to work. I mean, we have the ability to take care of each other, but what I resent is that why the fuck am I paying taxes? Why the fuck am I paying all these taxes if my government is refusing to meet our very, very basic needs? So I think we need to be withholding a lot of things, votes, taxes, a lot of shit.
And I think that they're really trying to instill, and I think like a group of us have been talking about this for a while, but like the civility politics around all of it is that, like, to be smart, you can't get angry. If you really have a point, you can't curse. Like trying to instill in people ways to tamp down their anger, which is rightful anger with what is going on right now, how badly this stuff is being handled. This is one thing I forgot to talk about, but like the fact that, like, okay, we're talking about abortion rights. We watched a clip the other day about Kentucky where they just passed really restrictive rights. There was one woman on the board, and she was also the only doctor.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way that we run. Not like politics should be representative, but also should there not be some sort of element where we have some sort of consulting there? Because it's like we have people who are lawyers talking about the economy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, what do they know? What do they really know? And I'm sick of this civility shit, because politics should be, listen, I might have to curse you out to get my point across. And that just might have to be what it is. But I am sick of this, like Joe Biden saying the right things. There are no results. I'm sick of progressives saying the right things. There are no results. And like then a big part of that is then when we feel it and we see it and we feel betrayed and we say, hey, wait a second, our money, you gave our little bit of money to this person. They don't support what we do. Or wait a second, you voted over here. If we call it out, then, you're hurting the progress. You're hurting the progress. No, there is no progress. Okay? Like, I just feel like I'm sick of the civility. I need people who are ready to be like, this person voted this way. This person voted this way. Call them out. We don't have the time. We don't have the time. And so, like just this whole thing about, like, even it happens with Ukraine, like as you were saying, like you can't even really comment on Ukraine because it's like, oh, you don't care about humanity. Oh, you support Russia to completely and totally. It's just, they just try to make everything like so dumbed down that there's no nuance whatsoever. You can't have any conversation about it. And I'm just really sick of them making us at least be quiet and be civil with our tone when they are so aggressive and so violent with the way that they are treating us.
That's right.
I want to check out the results from that poll. So I'm curious to see what people have said. So the question that was asked was, who is to blame for Roe v. Wade not being codified into law? And here are the results. So 3% of you said Republicans, 32% said Democrats, and 65% said both parties. Thank you guys so much for participating in that. I appreciate it. But as you can see, the majority of people did not blame the Republicans. Yeah. The majority of people blame both parties, did not blame the Republicans by themselves. The majority of people said both parties, and then second were Democrats. So just wanted to share that. And thank you so much, Reverend Edmund Bolella, for the super chat. What the U.S. has long done to minorities, they will soon do to the majority. And this is where I tell people, this is where the class issue comes in. Because look, if you're poor, it doesn't matter if you're on the left or the right. You're still poor. Neither one of those parties care about you if you're poor. I'm just keeping it real.
Yeah, I 100% agree, Sab. That was about what I was about to say. Like, this is a class war, and until we can start talking about it as a class issue and take everything else out of it, we're not going to make any progress. Because if you think about it, back in the times of Fred Hampton, when they got really upset with him was when he started making a rainbow coalition, and he was talking to everyone, and everyone was working together. That was when they killed him. So if we start thinking about this as a class issue and we're all on the same level, no matter what color you are, that's when we're going to make some progress. Movement, I should say movement, not progress.
Agreed. And I'll take, I'm going to go ahead and take this comment really quick on Rockfin, Eric, although I can't really, I'll let you do it. Okay. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Ian. The United States government has no authority to regulate what you can and cannot do with your body. See the 10th Amendment to the Constitution. If they're ignoring their founding documents, you have every right to alter or abolish this system of government. Thank you so much, Ian.
Ian's an anarchist, huh? I mean, it's fair though. Fair is fair. Are they representing the people?
That's true, though. You have the right to abolish this form of this system if it's not working. And I feel like we always forget about that. And it's true. It's our literal right to do it. This shit ain't working.
I don't think people forget about it. I think people are well aware of it. I think people are too afraid. And I think Americans are very, very comfortable. And this is the only time, now is the first time we've ever been like a little bit uncomfortable since maybe the Great Depression when people were standing on bread lines. But I think Americans are just so comfortable that they're not going, they know that we could do a coup. We could all get together. We could all get into the street.
I don't think people know that.
I think they know it. I think they're too afraid. I think they're too
How?
afraid.
They think they're going to go to jail. It says right there, it's our right to amend this whole system of government if it's not working. But as we've seen, how do you do that unless you try to take it by force? I mean, I don't know how you do that. I say take it by force.
That's why I asked the question, because
Stay at home.
That's why I was asking that question, because like in Brazil, if you have 50% plus one unity that don't go to vote, you have to cancel the elections and launch a referendum to see if the population of that country is in accordance with the system in place. So if people don't vote, you have to change the system and let them vote for. And I mean, we have people dying from starvation as well. And we have a very young constitution. It's from 1988, thanks to the USA. But it's still like, it's a very young constitution that has some points that were put in by comrades, right? That they knew that by putting something in the constitution is the way to protect yourself. But then you have a very criminal constitution that has even slavery in it. And then, like, how can you change things? You have to be aggressive against your government, because the more they push, I mean, I'm saying you, but I'm here, us. The more they push us and the more we retract, the more they will push. They will not be like, oh no, they behaving good, I'm going to stop. No, disobedience is a revolutionary act. It is what it is, but for a reason, because they wanted to be cordial. If you get the grade of students in Brazil of the military government supported by the United States, financed by the United States, you're going to see that the grade was the same as here. You had studies to learn how to be cordial, what you can say or not about your government. Just that little piece of history that you can say. They give that to other countries as a model of creating robots. And that's what they're doing here. But now they are lost a little bit because we have other ways to communicate. And I think the more we do it together, the more we communicate across seas, the more we can grow as a movement.
I mean, another thing to think about too is like, if you think back to like the civil rights movement, the numbers they were able to gather to have people march on Washington, guys, there was no internet, there was no social media, no cell phones, and they were able to organize and mobilize thousands of people to come out and march and protest. So it just boggles my mind when people say, we don't have time for that, or we don't have the numbers. I'm like, are you kidding me? Look at how much technology that we have. We have a leg up above them because they didn't have it.
True. That's what I'm saying about comfort. Americans are too comfortable. We're too comfortable to get out in the streets and actually do something.
That is true.
And we're
we
heavily
need more than pink
propagandized.
pussy hats. You know,
There's a lot of
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No,
Zena.
we're heavily propagandized. That's all I wanted to say is like, that's really, yes, we have cell phones. Yes, we have internet, and that is where we're always being overwhelmed with like, pay attention to this, pay attention to this, pay attention to this, you know, like so my kids, some of them are teenagers, and they're like, who's Johnny Depp? And I'm like, oh my God, why do you even know? Like, I'm talking to you about this stuff, you know, but they're already, you pick it up. And so it's like, I honestly think sometimes getting away from that and like doing more community work and like, you know what I'm saying? Like finding your people, that means more than whatever you can do, you know,
well, but
outside of that.
I think the thing about the internet that really is deceptive is that it creates this whole sense of being close because you're constantly in contact with people, but the community you don't actually have. You don't really know people. You don't even know their phone numbers or their real names sometimes. You're dealing with people's aliases. Like, you don't really have that closeness. And so I think that we think that we're like more interconnected, but honestly, I think we're more apart than we've ever been because we can't start revolutions. And this is something I see on the right, quite frankly. They go out, they have a good time. They're going to meet at the back of a VFW, 10 people, have a beer, talk about whatever, but they're building bonds. They might be 5 people show up in a park, but they're not going to make fun of them. And I do see that sometimes on the left where it's like, oh, what are the numbers? Just go and have a good time and start making those connections.
Right.
And that's what's important.
They're also building talking points. I mean, I think that's one of the things that the left is pretty bad at marketing, unfortunately. I don't know why, but I mean, they're building, you can talk to a person on the right and they've got their talking points. They know where they stand. You know what I'm saying? And I think that, you know, hanging out, with 10 people at a VFW, if you do that, 4 times a year, you're getting your talking points. You're getting all that information. So,
but that sense of community too,
right?
So you feel supported in what you also believe, and that is what builds, and builds that energy. And the left, every time we try to get together or do something, it's like somebody wants to cut it at the knees. I don't appreciate that. I don't like
people,
that.
Not cool enough. Not this. Not that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, no.
Well, but it's usually I hate to say it, but it's usually the elite, wealthy people who cut it at the knees. They're usually the ones that try to smear it. They don't want anything to do with it. Instead of just leaving it alone, they'll try to smear it on social media, especially Twitter. It's usually the wealthy people, the wealthy white leftists who actually don't want to do any direct action of their own. They don't do any organizing. They don't really push back or fight for anything. They're lazy. They're the problem. And this is something CJ has talked about multiple times. This is why we have to change the way that things have been done. This needs to be led by people who are working class, people who are poor, not by people who are millionaires and billionaires. And that's the problem.
But the people who got the most upset, the people who got the most upset about Roe versus Wade are some of the people that we're talking about. It's a little weird.
Well, that's why I was talking about the pink pussy hats. I mean, that was 1.5 million marches. There was all over the city. I mean, it looked like organizing. It felt energized, but I kind of knew what was happening on the inside and then saw what developed from it. Wanted to have something that felt like a movement, that felt like energy. So I'm not speaking poorly of the people that participated in it, to be involved in it, but the Democratic Party loved it because it was a show for them. They could say, look, we're going to champion. As soon as we have the majority, 1.5 million people are marching. We're going to do something. And then the House, they haven't done a damn thing. And then we're going to get out and march again. And then they're going to say, we'll do that, and then we find out that they're actually bankrolling sometimes these events. So that they can then say they show the protest, but there's no product. There's a protest, but there's no change, and so now protests have almost become a facade. So that's why things like Occupy Wall Street's crushed. And that's why they're freaking out, because people are showing up at their homes because they're not controlling it's not controlled opposition. They have that controlled opposition. It makes them look good. How do we organize, outside of that? Kim's mentioned a bunch of things tonight. I'm like, yes, girl. Like, it's stuff that we could actually do in our communities, and I'm just thinking, what the hell can we do right now? You mentioned Kentucky, been very upset about that. My family, I'm here in Kentucky, they are chipping away at all kinds of rights right now. It's not just that. Contraceptives, there were at least 4 Congress people talking about contraceptives now. They're talking about it's Atwood tried to tell us, man. She said this stuff's already existed when I wrote my book. This was all things that's happened in history. And I feel like we're getting to that point again. And we have been. This isn't new. None of this is new. There's been restrictions forever. I was poor when I had my daughter. I needed the alternative, but I couldn't because I didn't have $1,800 to get it. I looked at giving her up for adoption. I couldn't do that. I have her now. I take care of her. I love her, but I would never want to force that on anyone. So I didn't have the choice because I didn't have any resources. And then when I did get support, I only got $325 a month from KTAP. It's called the SNAP Benefits Transitional Program. And it was the child support that the absent father was supposed to pay. But to get that, women have to work 20 to 40 hours a week for our government. So they go in, they work, they get child support, and it's only a few $100s a month. So it's basically forced labor, way below the minimum wage. I covered that as a journalist. A lot of people aren't even aware that there are women working at the DMV that's only getting like $400 a month, and that's their child support, and they're forced to work to get their child support. And it's a problem. But so they want us to have babies, and then they won't even do a damn thing to help us.
So they force the moms to work.
One thing I was
very
say,
horrible. Sorry, Sabby.
Yeah, no, it's horrible. Zeneb, thank you so much for sharing that, because I don't think a lot of people understand when you talk about the economic situations that people are in. Not everyone can carry the baby for 9 months, deliver the baby, and then give the baby up for adoption. Not everyone can do that. So not everyone can afford to have an abortion, but at the same time, like, they want you to have the child, but then if you don't have the resources to take care of the child, they don't want you to get help from the state. So which is it? So one of the things I was going to add on to what Zeneb said about how do we do this? I'll tell you what we should not do in reference to like the protests and these movements. When I think back to Occupy Wall Street was phenomenal. Like, in my opinion, the problem is a politician co-opted that movement. And this is something we have to stop. But like, you look at like Bernie Sanders' movement, that was basically Occupy Wall Street. The 99% versus the 1%. Then he took on that and made it a part of his movement. And then he left his movement. And then the Democratic Party co-opted the term progressive. So this is why you cannot do it through the 2-party system. It's going to have to be among the people who are not politicians, because once they get involved, they get their hands on it. And then corporations get their hands on it. And that's how they're destroyed. Like, look at Black Lives Matter. It's nothing now. It's just a moneymaker.
Yeah, power and money are corruptible forces. That's why I'm a socialist, because I know, you know what I'm saying? I don't know what it's like to make $14 million, and I don't actually want to. I'd prefer to not, have to go down that path. I don't think that that's very helpful. Most people in the green circuit just call Bernie the sheepdog. They don't actually, and I know that's mean, or how, I don't know how people feel about him, but I know that that's just what they call him. They don't even use his name. They're like, oh, the sheepdog. Oh, that's Bernie Sanders. That's what he does. But I just wanted to mention, because a lot of people, especially if you're still not sure if you're pro-life or you're pro-abortion because you're uneducated or perhaps propagandized, you're not sure. People who want children are affected poorly by these bills. So if you're a woman and you very desperately want to have a baby, at some point, you're going to have to deal with the fact that miscarriages happen. And your life could expire just by trying to make sure you can have that service. Because you could die of an infection if you miscarry and you cannot pass, you know what I'm saying, what's happening. And so, sorry, the camera just shifted. So it's like, people aren't even aware that the pro-life crowd is very staunchly against life because they don't even want to help mothers who are struggling to conceive. And so it's really not, for me, it's a privacy issue. Like, you have no damn business to know. I think somebody made a comment about like the anti-mandate, and it is a bit difficult to see people like, my body, my choice, but they're pro-life. I don't understand it. I don't understand it.
Doesn't make sense.
I know. I feel you. So
that
so
shit is bullshit. Yeah. I'm sorry. I've also been like anti-mandate. That's fine. That's fine. I totally understand that. But the same fucking people are trying to force people to have children for the rest of their lives. How is that equivalent? How is it equivalent? So
yeah, how can you not see, right? Because it's very clear to me, it's clear to you all that this is like a privacy issue, this is autonomy, and people are just like, well, one side or other of the fence. No, like, we're talking about people dying. These are the kind of things that happen when you don't pay attention to the politics. And I hate politics as much as anybody does, but here we are. You know.
So to Delilah's point, I mean, I just read, just recently that the story of a woman who was having a miscarriage, and so then she needed to get the pill form of abortion, which is mifestrone or whatever it is, and she wanted to get it filled at a CVS, and so then her doctor had to call and say she's having a miscarriage, but we need her to take these pills so that she can continue, carry through the full miscarriage or whatever. And then CVS ended up not filling it because they didn't know what their legal, liability was in this situation. So I think, so what you're saying about, how it affects all women, whether you want to have the baby or not, is going to affect you. And then really quickly, I just wanted to go back to Kim and Zainab both mentioned Handmaid's Tale. And I think that we're taking, some people are taking the wrong part of Handmaid's Tale. The part of Handmaid's Tale that people are taking is that, oh no, women's rights are being, violated. The part of Handmaid's Tale that we should be taking is the part where all of these women start organizing underground and getting each other out and like doing, like, that's the part that we need to take. Like, let's get each other out. Let's organize underground. Let's get outside of this shit because you already know that they're coming for us. But that's all I think.
Well said. Well, I want to thank like all of you for coming on. Thanks so much. I'm gonna give a shout out to Truth Bear, and then if everyone can go around and tell everyone where they can find you. Thank you so much, Truth Bear. The Democratic Party loves movements that don't have tangible action plans. Thank you so much for that. All right, heading out. Josana, where can everyone find you?
Well, everyone can find me on RBN on Tuesdays with Nick, and hopefully in the roundtables. We're working on that. I am also organizing, I think, with all of you here. Yes, with all of you here, the Camp Dada action. That's so cool. Yeah, we all organize in this action, and you will find me there when it happens. And yes, organizing that too. It's a form. Ask yourself, what is Camp Dada? Look at us in Twitter, and then ask questions, DM us. We can answer you all. Thank you so much for having me here, Sabby, and all of you.
Thanks, Josana. Kim, where can everyone find you?
Hey, you can find me on my YouTube channel at Burn It Down with Kim Brown. Contrary to somebody in the chat, I am not an agent. I'm sorry. I had to laugh. So I said I was the FBI. Me? Really? Okay. Sure thing, Buggy. Burn It Down with Kim Brown every Tuesday and Friday at 7 p.m. I'm also part of the Black Power Media Collective, and I co-host the Remix Morning Show Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday mornings, 8 to 10 a.m. So come check us out.
Awesome. Delilah, where can people find you?
Oh, hey y'all, I'm from Texas, so I'm here. Thanks for having me. I'm always so grateful to be in this space with y'all. I'm just grateful for that, so thank you. I am at Delilah for Texas on Twitter. DelilahForTexas.com is our website. We have a donor box. I'm on TikTok and Instagram too. I'll be out here making noise, so say hi.
Awesome. Keisha and Courtney, where can people find you?
Hey, y'all. If you could please please go check out Camp Dada at Info Change Camp. A lot of the women that you see here, everybody you see here supports. A lot of people are coming. I just think it's really, really important for us to be building bonds as leftists, and especially as female leftists, just getting to know each other. And so appreciate so much of having us in this space. But check that out, Camp Dada. Yeah, thanks for having us, Sabby.
Thanks so much. And Zainab, where can people find you?
Zainab Day. So my name at Zainab Day on Twitter. And I'm also working with Joshana and Keisha and Courtney, just helping organize a little bit on the back end of Camp Dada. Really excited about that. So yes, I will be one more person to say, go check that out, because camping, community, and then talking about what's next with action and organizing. So throw up your ideas on there as well when you visit. And I may have a few articles coming out. I'm an investigative journalist, so you want to visit at Zainab Day on Twitter, and you can find those as well. And thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Guys, tomorrow night, Cynthia McKinney will be back, so definitely come back and check me out then. Tuesday, Adolph Reed will be here, and I believe Wednesday, Savage Joy will be here to talk about the new Medicare for All march that's happening this summer in DC. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Sabby.
Good night, ladies.
So good to talk to y'all.
Bye,
Beautiful,
guys.
intelligent,
Night,
fun power. Hell yeah.
Bye.
Have a great weekend.
Love y'all.